Okay, this is Precalculus lesson 6.1, and this first example here, we're gonna find the values of the six trig functions for a triangle. Now, the first thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to identify the sides of any right triangle. So, if you look over here at this, we've got a theta right here. That means that that's our reference angle right there. That's the angle we're going to be talking about in this problem. Okay, so once you know the reference angle, now this becomes the leg opposite because it's across from the reference angle. Adjacent actually means next to, so this is the leg that's adjacent to the reference angle. And of course, the hypotenuse is always the side that's across from the 90-degree angle. So if I were to switch my reference angle up here to this angle, the hypotenuse would still be the hypotenuse, but this would no longer be the adjacent. This would now be the opposite. And this would no longer be the opposite. This would now be the adjacent since it's next to the reference angle. Okay? So with that in mind, we also want to remember the three easiest trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. I'm sure you've all heard this before. You remember the phrase so, ka, toa, which means that the sine is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So we get so, ka, toa. Okay? Now, if we were to find the six trig functions for this particular triangle right here, we have a problem because we're missing a side. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what this other side is, and we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem on that. So we'll call this C. So 12 squared plus 5 squared equals C squared. 144 plus 25 is C squared. It's 169 is C squared. And I square root both sides, and I get C equals 13. So now that I know all three sides of the triangle, I can find the six trig functions. So the sine of theta is the opposite, 5 over the hypotenuse, 13. The cosine of theta is the adjacent, which is 12 over the hypotenuse, which is 13. The tangent is the opposite, which is 5 over the adjacent, which is 12. Now that's three of the trig functions. There's actually six. So the next one is the cosecant. Okay, the cosecant is the reciprocal of the sine, so that's going to be 13/5. The secant is the reciprocal of the cosine, that's going to be 13/12. And the cotangent is the reciprocal of the tangent, that would be 12/5. And I now have my six trig functions for that particular right triangle, and I'm done.